because that trauma creates these stories in our heads. And if we can just get them out, then we can start to distance ourselves from them because they're just stories.
Exactly. Instead of like,
Mhm.
people become the story, like instead of let it being a part of your story, like now this is the story that I relive every day, every day, every day. No, this is just part of your story. This is not your story. You're stuck in a chapter, then you keep on repeat, and a lot of people stay in one chapter and it's on repeat, or got that same song playing over and over and over in their head. Like, it's time to flip the page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're so right.
Yeah.
So right.
Welcome to A Sister's Love, the podcast that helps women who are healing by having those deep conversations, giving practical advice and words of encouragement. Come on, let's talk about it.
I want to welcome our guest, Veronica. Veronica, would you give us the pleasure of introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Veronica Armstrong. I'm a life, leadership, and Gallup certified strengths coach. And I coach women who secretly doubt their greatness so they can find clarity, overcome their fear, and develop the confidence to harness their unique talents and become exceptional leaders at work and at home. But what that means is that I deal with the woman, whether or not it's personal, whether or not it's professional. I coach women so they can be their best and operate in their zone of genius.
That's awesome. Woo! That sounds powerful, because a lot of people don't realize that to be successful in business is like you have to be successful in self. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people think like, oh, I could conquer this part, but like if it's not a good balance, it's not going to work. You have to have a good balance with business and self for it all to work together. So a lot of people can be good in the business, but not good in the personal part. And personal will sometimes interfere with that.
Absolutely. The thing that I say to people all the time is you are you, no matter if you're at home or if you're at work. So if you're not dealing with you, then you're allowing that part of you to interfere with whatever it is that you're doing. So we can't separate the two because we are who we are, whether or not we're at work or whether or not we're at home.
That is so true. That just reminded me of something that I heard. They was like, a lot of people feel like, oh, let me get up and move and let me go to a different city and I'll be better in a different city. They were like, but you know what's going to stay the same? You're going to follow
Right.
you to that next city. So no matter
Right.
if you move or jump into a different relationship or jump into a different situation, you're going to continue to be you. So
Right.
until you work on you,
Yeah.
you would still be the problem would still follow you. So
Yeah. And how I say it is you cannot run from yourself.
yeah. Then you look behind like, oh, it's like that shadow. It's your shadow.
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
coming. I'm coming wherever you go. Don't matter what. You can sit in the dark all you want. When something, I'm still going to see you. You're still going to be with yourself. So totally agree
Absolutely.
with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's get a little deeper. Let's talk about what got you started in this field and what started you to work with women. Like, what is some of those experiences that you had as a child that caused you to want to do this type of work?
So one of the things that I have learned is that there are so many of us that go through childhood experiences that leave us traumatized. I'm not a trauma coach. I'm not, I don't have a specialty in trauma, but I do know a lot of what we experience comes from childhood trauma. My background is this. All before the age of 15, I was in 3 group homes, 2 foster homes, and a juvenile detention center, all before the age of 15. And I was also declared an emancipated minor at age 15. There are so many people who looked at my life and felt that I was going to become a statistic, right? I mean, I could have done plenty of things, but I didn't become the statistic that most people thought I would become. I had a lot of women come into my life at pivotal times and really share with me whatever tidbits of information I needed. And all of that information helped me to overcome a lot of those traumas, a lot of what I went through and thinking, a lot of the limiting beliefs, a lot of the negative self-talk, a lot of that. I was able to overcome that and achieve things I'd never imagined achieving. And so I experienced as I worked with women in corporate America, because I started in corporate America very young and I became a VP, leading large teams, 400 or 500 people, and typically the highest ranking in my area, often. And so people would, other women and other people would look at me and say, how did you get there? How did you do this? And I'd spend time talking to these women. And as a leader, it was my responsibility to talk to them. And I went through so many experiences where people didn't believe in themselves. They shortchanged themselves. They didn't go after things because of all of the negativity, all of the negative, that kind of talk that they heard from other people, and other people not believing in them, and women not getting the encouragement that they needed from at home, from other people. And they just got in their own way. And I felt that at some point, because for a long time, I did not talk about my background. I didn't talk about my experiences because I didn't want people to look at me and go, oh, yeah, you're one of those, right?
Yeah.
But then I realized that I didn't go through that to hold it in. I went through that. And I overcame that so that I could be the vessel with which that message was shared with other women, that they can overcome everything that they have been through as well. They just have to make the right moves and take the right steps, and they have to stop looking backwards and start looking forward. So that's what got me to where I am today.
So when you were 15, you was emancipated. Like, how did that process come about?
Another young lady, pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah.
So at that point, I ended up walking away from a foster home. When they talk about how foster homes can be really scary, they can be. And I was in a foster home for a week with a family who looked like me, who were having me clean up after them. Every single time they ate, I was cleaning up after them. I was cleaning after their 3-year-old son. I just felt that environment was a little scary. Like, why am I here to clean up after people all the time? Like, what is this? Like, what is going on? And I had the wherewithal. I don't know where I got this money from, but I had the wherewithal, because this is in New Rochelle, New York, right? This wasn't far from where I grew up. I had the wherewithal to leave the house and take the bus and go back home. I had to find the courage, because I vividly remember the day when that happened, and I was terrified. And I just decided I was going to leave when nobody was at home. And I caught the bus and I went back home. And of course, my mom was in an uproar. So I ended up back in court. And my attorney had an intern who was only 23 at the time. Her name was Mary. I know her full name. I'm not going to say her full name. Her name was Mary. And Mary said to me, actually, I was in a holding cell. And so Mary had read through my entire file, and she had asked the security guard, could she come back and see me in the court and in the holding cell. And so she got back there, and I was handcuffed, and she asked the security guard to unhandcuff me because she didn't think I should be handcuffed. And she said to me, I've read your file, and from what I see, I don't think you're the problem. I think it's all the adults around you. If I can get you declared an emancipated minor, would you like that? And I said, well, I don't know what that is. And so she explained, and mind you, she's only 23 at the time. So she explained to me what emancipated minor was. And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. She says, do you have anyone who will come and get you, because you'll have to live with someone else? And I said, yeah, I have a friend. So I called my friend's dad, and they asked him to come to the courthouse. Now, my mother, this was all happening unbeknownst to my mom. And so my friend's dad came to the courthouse, and they get into the courtroom, and then they state the case of declaring me an emancipated minor. My mother was absolutely perturbed. She had no idea this was happening. She was blindsided by this. I was declared an emancipated minor, and I left the courtroom that day, a free young adult going to my friend's house. But I only lasted there for 6 months, right? I only lasted there for 6 months, and then I ended up going back home. But because I was an emancipated minor at that point, there was not much my mother could do. And it actually made our relationship better, right? So that's how that all came about.
How did it make your relationship better with your mother? Like, can you explain a little bit?
Because she couldn't do or say anything. I mean, well, she could require, that I come in at a certain time, what have you, but she had just kind of thrown in the towel at that point, because she realized her rights had been revoked. She couldn't do or say anything. And so she let me come back home. But what she began to realize is that I was pretty smart. I just wasn't entertained by all of what I was involved in. And so she just kind of backed away. I mean, I would go out until 2:00 in the morning and come back and do my homework until 6, and I was still in the honor roll. right? I played basketball, I ran track, I was on color guard. I did all these things. I was not out there running the street doing drugs. I wasn't doing all of that. I was just a little busybody with my friends, and I just wanted to hang out, and I just, wanted a little bit of freedom. And I just didn't feel that they were giving it to me. But when she backed away and allowed me to be me, and she saw, well, she's not that dangerous, she's not that bad, things were fine. Things were absolutely fine. I just didn't have the best relationship with my mom. And that's also because she had me out of wedlock, her first time out the gate with my dad. And her family, did not like my father. So I was a constant reminder, and my father was her first love. So it was a constant reminder of what she could not have. Right.
Gotcha.
So that, that whole dynamic was not great. But her inability to control, because her parental rights had been revoked, she got thrown out. It was just much easier for the both of us.
I agree with that. And yeah, like I kind of agree. Like sometimes that's what parenting like right now, like even without the emancipation, like I had to learn how to step back from my kids too and just allow them to be themselves and then see who they blossom into instead of try to have your hands over it and control every situation. I learned that also. And as I allow them to be themselves, I also learned that like, oh, they actually has been listening to me. They actually know exactly what I'm telling them to do. I just have to give them time to show me that they actually observe the information and the contents around them. So yeah, I agree. Like stepping back a little bit as a parent and giving your child the space to explore who they are instead of who you want them to be will be a great asset to your relationship with your kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree, because I think that as a parent, we sometimes forget, we have a job of bringing a child into the world, but they are a different human, right? And sometimes what we do is we try to instill, and I say sometimes inflict, instill in them the things that we learned, which aren't always the best, right? And we don't take a step back and ask ourselves, how is that serving this child? And is it allowing this child to blossom into the person that they were born to be? And sometimes that's what parents know, right? That's what they know. But when we get older and we step back and we take a look at who our parents were as parents, we also have to come to terms with the fact they knew what they knew, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes it's not the best, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But they just knew what they knew. They did the best with what they could, with what they had.
Exactly. Especially like parents, like with me, like I've been through a lot of traumatic situations. So I'm moving out of space of protection and safety. So when I moved that, like just reassuring them, like I have to reassure my kids a lot, like mommy is not doing this on purpose. Like I have these things that I'm working through and like keeping them in the loop. Like I'm working through some stuff. So it might be moments where I see overprotective, or I might be doing stuff that you don't agree with. I'm not doing it intentionally. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to make myself feel safe and make sure I keep you safe at the same time. So like just keeping your kids in the loop and being open, having open conversations and allowing them into your healing process. If you are going through some traumatic situation, like it's not fair to keep everybody out of the process. Like, oh, this is my process. I got to do this alone. No, especially if you got kids, you have to involve them and let them know what's going on in this process. Like with you and your mom's situation, like she had a big thing about your father and then she felt like she was broken because she couldn't be with him. Letting you in on that relationship and then try to connect with you would have probably made that relationship just a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. So right about that.
Yeah. Like people just being open more and vulnerable. Like people are scared. Like that's a part of safety. Like people are really scared to be open and vulnerable. And it's like, that is the key to healing. Like just being open and vulnerable is the biggest key. Like you have to open up to be able to start to heal and be aware of what's going on with you.
Right, because if you don't know whether or not other people understand, because oftentimes people do, number one. And number two, it allows you to start to distance yourself from the story, right? Because that trauma creates these stories in our heads. And if we can just get them out, then we can start to distance ourselves from them because they're just stories.
Exactly. Instead of like people become the story, like instead of let it being a part of your story. Like now this is the story that I relive every day, every day, every day. No, this is just part of your story. This is not your story. You're stuck in a chapter, then you keep on repeat. And a lot of people stay in one chapter and it's on repeat, or got that same song playing over and over and over in their head. Like it's time to flip the page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're so right. So right.
Now, I want to talk about how did your traumatic situation lead you into your professional business? Like what started that? What was that initial thing that started you to make you want to do what you're doing right now?
I began to see a pattern, and the pattern was that the women who were asking me, well, how did you get here? How did you do this? And I constantly found myself being the one giving, being the mentor, helping people. But I also recognized that I had a gift at being able to help people get out of their own way. And I really started to embrace that. I think it was in the early 2000s, I started to embrace this gift of being able to get women to see themselves outside of the stories they were telling themselves. But it wasn't until 2017 that I decided to do, let me turn this into a coaching business. And I didn't actually start doing it full time until just within the last, 8 months. Otherwise, I was still in corporate America. So it was really my encountering situation after situation after situation, and really starting to tend to the person as opposed to all this other stuff. Because oftentimes it's about work. I've got this I'm dealing with, I got this I'm dealing with. But in reality, it's not about any of those things. It's about what's happening right here, right? And once you start acknowledging that and you start working on that and you start to realize that working on that, working from the inside out is really helping these women achieve things far greater than they'd ever imagined. So I just found myself doing that more and more in the corporate space. But then I felt conflicted because if you're not talking about just the numbers, just performance, and, this warm and fuzzy over here, people weren't resonating with that. I couldn't spend my time over here. I had to spend my time driving performance. And it became a situation where I was like, yeah, no, I'm not finding as much fulfillment in that as much as I'm finding fulfillment in helping women get out of their own way. So it was a gradual process, but it wasn't until 2017 that I said, this is something I really want to do.
That's awesome. Can you kind of walk us through the process, like when you sit down with women to help them discover like the things that they're going through, to help them like start to break down those layers?
So I do have a process, and the process starts with self-awareness. It's really about being self-aware, because there's so many of us who live on autopilot. We make these automatic decisions, just like getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. That's autopilot because it's just a thing we do. These automatic decisions that we make on a daily basis, those decisions actually create the situations that we're in. The decisions that we make today create, tomorrow. And so really it's about getting them to become very, very self-aware. That is about understanding who they are as a person, looking at their limiting beliefs and understanding all of those, and helping them embrace the person that they are, not the person that people have told them that they are, not the person that they've heard they are, none of that. It is just embrace who you are. And let's start there. And limiting beliefs are a big deal, because limiting beliefs are those things that hold you back. So then we start working on creating empowering beliefs so that you can then look at things through a different lens. And then we just kind of go on from there. It's like, what is it that they want to accomplish? I'll give you an example. I had a client who wanted to be promoted. She really thought she deserved this promotion. But for whatever reason, every single time she was either in a meeting, she couldn't find her voice. She felt like she was inadequate, all of these different things. And some of that came from some trauma that she had experienced in her life where she felt that she wasn't good enough. And so with those types of limiting beliefs, as a coach, I have to challenge them. I have to challenge my client to challenge those beliefs until they get to a point where they recognize these things aren't true. These are stories that I'm telling myself that are holding me back. And then we have to replace those limiting beliefs with empowering beliefs. And once we replace those beliefs, we also look at identity. Identity is a big deal, and we don't really talk enough about identity. You have to be the person that is going to do the things that need to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
And I'll use weight loss as an example because this is an easy one for me. Is that when we talk about losing weight, we talk about, oh, I've got to go exercise, I've got to eat right, I've got to do this, I got to do that. But if your identity doesn't change, if you're still the person in this body that you don't like, if you leave that identity the same, but yet you change your behaviors, there's a tug of war there that's going on. And oftentimes we end up giving up. We don't need to deal with this plan of eating and exercise first. What we need to understand is, what is the identity of the person that is that person that you want to become? If you want to become a thin person or a healthy person, who are those people? And what is their identity? How do they see themselves? You first have to change your identity before those things that you put into place can happen. I mean, you can do them, but they're not necessarily going to stick. So we deal with identity as well. So if you want to get a promotion, if you want to, whatever you want to do, we have to look at your identity today. We have to peel back all the layers of that. And we have to understand what that identity is, and then determine what that identity needs to be in order for you to have the things that you want to have. So we go through this process, starting with, self-awareness, and we start peeling back all these layers and understanding who you are, to creating that identity, to creating those objectives, those goals, or where you want to go. And then you've kind of created that map for that destination.
That's cool. That's cool. So I was just thinking about, so like with me, I want to be this great podcast person. And in my mind, if I identify with a person that's saying like, oh, I identify with a person that doesn't know how to speak, or I don't think I'm good enough as a speaker, even though my behaviors is aligning with what I want to become, my thoughts is aligned with who I think I am, that will cause a conflict, and it won't allow me to excel at my greatest potential, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah, that's cool. A lot of people don't think of it like that. Like, I identify, like what you said with the weight, like I identify as a chubby person, but I want to be a healthy person. So it's like switching your thought process. So it's mostly the thought process around the situation that to align with the behaviors. Like, we can switch behaviors is easy because people can pick up habits and we can do that. But if the thought is not aligned with the behaviors, it's going to eventually cause you to give up.
Absolutely. It just makes it harder.
Definitely. I agree, because I'd be having my freeze moments. I'd be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this no more. Like, I can't do this. I get one bad comment, like you get bad comments, you get stuff like that. And they be like, yeah, they're right. They're right. So I should just stop. And that they just reassure the thoughts that's in your head. So it makes it easier for you to give up. So like having a strong belief system and not being influenced by your environment and the things around you is a strong thing too. Like knowing, having a good solid identity and knowing who you are and who you want to become is very strong in your process of healing. Yeah. Because I go through it a lot, and I challenge myself. Like when I do have those goals, I have to challenge myself. I have to like write them down. Like, is this really true? Is this really what you believe? Like, or is it what other people are telling you? Is this the identity that other people adopted on top of you? Or is it something that you truly believe? So I have to go through that with myself all the time, especially with that enough. Like, do I feel enough? Do I feel worthy? Do I feel great? Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing though. So I'm gonna add to what you're saying. So you said you have this, this thought process about who you are, what have you. When you are looking at the identity, you also have to take steps to become the person that you want to become. So it's not just about the thought processes. Yeah. Let's just use what you just said a few minutes ago. You said something. What did you say? What are one of the challenges you have about being a great podcaster that you don't think you do well? What are those things?
my ability to speak fluidly. Like I skip over my words a lot, and I get like fundo, and I just like I'm doing right now. I get nervous, and
Okay.
then I'll just forget my thought process, and I'm like, oh my god, don't see. I just get fidgety.
That's okay. Because here's the thing, as a coach, I would say, what can we do or what can you do to help improve that? What are some of the things that you can do that will get you out of your comfort zone, that will force you to constantly deal with those things so that those traits will start to diminish over time? So that's about becoming, that's your identity. It's about becoming the person that is getting that result. It's not just about thinking that you're this, it's also becoming that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I do. That's why I'm here today. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I do it every day. Like, I have like 10,000 thoughts that went through my mind this morning before we got on here. And I was like, I can reschedule. We can reschedule. I don't feel like it today. And I'm like, no, I'm going to push through it. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do this interview. I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to be the person that I want to be. So I'm here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Then that's exactly what you do. And that's, as a coach, what I would encourage my clients to do.
Definitely. Like, just pushing through your thought process and like showing up for yourself like you would show up for anybody else. That's my biggest thing. Like, if it was for a friend, what would I do? I would get up and I would show up for them, because that's how I want to be a great support system to that person. So the same support that I give to other people, I have to start to give to myself.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, before we end, I want you to, can you please give the listeners, like, what was that big thing that you did that helped you to actually break separate from your trauma, like the start that actually helped you heal your trauma?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So when I look back at my childhood and I look back at the people who I felt inflicted trauma, whether knowingly or unknowingly, they're all family members in many cases. You know, my mother, having gone through a failed marriage, having to support 3 kids on her own, and just not the most patient person. My biological father, just being a very different person and just not being, I think, the nurturing kind of father that I think he should be. My stepfather, who actually raised me, for being abusive because he also abused me. He was an alcoholic. I looked at, even my mother's brothers and sisters who allowed some of her other relatives to verbally and emotionally and psychologically abuse me and, others. But as I got older, what I began to realize, and this is so important, is that our parents know what they know. And they themselves aren't necessarily equipped with the skills, tools, and resources to be the most effective parents. So to think that they were going to give us any more than they were capable of giving us, we are being too hard. So I had to look at my mom, and I just said, she had what she did what she could do. She wasn't even equipped. I wasn't going to get any more from her. I look at my dad, who's still alive. My mother's no longer alive. I look at my dad, and I don't talk to him today. We just don't see eye to eye. But I keep my distance because I respect him, but I'll keep my distance. But I also recognize he and I are cut from a different cloth. The way he was raised, the way I was raised is very different. The way he sees things, the way I see things are very, very different. But he knows what he knows. Mm-hmm. And I have to forgive them for not being the parents that I wanted them to be, because they weren't equipped to be the parents that I wanted them to be. So by forgiving them, I freed myself up to let go of all of what I used to hold on with them, and I have moved on. I recently had a conversation with one of my clients who, her mother doesn't do this, her mother doesn't do this, her mother doesn't do this. And I said to her, who told you that your mother was taught how to do those things? She had no answer. And so because she could not answer, I said, so until you can prove that she's equipped with all these skills, tools, and resources to do this, you should probably think about letting it go, because you're holding her to a standard that she likely is not going to meet. And she's going to continue to disappoint you. And you're going to allow your expectations to get in the way of your building a relationship with this woman and she could pass away tomorrow.
That is true. I had
And
like
she,
the same I had a situation when I had a conversation with somebody just like that. I'm like, you're depriving yourself of a great relationship because you want someone to be somewhere that you're at instead of meeting them where they are. I said, we have expectations for people and we want people to be a person that you imagine in your head, but sometimes they could be capable of that. But for that to happen, you have to meet them where they are. You have to. It's just not fair to try to pull somebody or drag somebody somewhere that they're not. And I'm like, you just have to give people time. I said, with that, showing that empathy and meeting them where they are and just showing compassion can also give people the courage and the ability to move forward in life. So just having that strength to just either meet them where they are, or like you said with your father, like, I respect him. I get what we're coming with, two different people. I forgive you and I'm just going to move on. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's either one or the other. Either you work with the process of where they are, or you respect where you are and you respect that, okay, this is something that I don't want to work towards anymore. I still love this person. I forgive this person. But right now in my life, I just gonna have to keep moving forward.
right, exactly. We sometimes think that forgiveness is about the other person, when in fact, forgiveness is freeing us up to move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then one other thing I want to say before we end this episode, like the same thing you said about your parents, understanding what they wasn't equipped with. With me personally, what helped me start my healing process was understanding that they had what they had, they did what they could do. But now that I am 21 and I am capable of healing myself, now it's my responsibility to equip myself with what they didn't equip me with. Now it's my turn. It's no longer the blame game. I am a 21. I am adult, and now I am capable and fully able to provide myself with everything that my parents did not provide. And a lot of people don't want to take that accountability. It's like taking accountability is now my responsibility.
You are so right, because who is going to change our lives but us? It goes back to what I said earlier. Instead of continually looking backwards, and that's what blaming your parents is doing. Blaming everybody else for the position that you're in is looking backwards. Taking just recognizing it is what it is. You can't change it, and saying, okay, whatever. But taking responsibility for your life today and taking the wheel so that you can get your life to where you want it to be tomorrow, that is your responsibility. That is absolutely your responsibility. And if we're always looking back, that means we're looking through our rearview mirror and we're not looking at the road ahead.
Exactly. Now, can you please tell the listeners how to get in touch with you and your social media, your website, and all that? And I'm also going to have it linked below, guys. So she's going to tell you in case y'all listening, but it'll also be under the show notes. So go ahead.
Yes. So you can, I have LinkedIn, Veronica C. Armstrong on LinkedIn. If they're looking at this on YouTube, there's a QR code. They can scan that. They can get me there. You can also get me on Facebook. I think it's Veronica C. Armstrong Coach on Facebook. You can get me also Leadership Life Support, because I have my life coaching part of the business and I have my leadership coaching part of the business. So leadershiplifesupport.com or Leadership Life Support on IG or Leadership Life Support on Facebook. And like I said before, veronicacarmstrong.com. That's my life coaching part of this, but it really is still dealing with professionals. So those are all of the places that you can find me on social media.
Well, that's it for today's episode of a Sisters Love Podcast. But before we end, I want to invite you to our new support group. This group is exclusive for podcast listeners. This is the perfect place for women to come together, share experiences, ask questions, and get access to exclusive resources. In this group, you can meet those amazing podcast guests like Veronica, get free resources, find support, and guess what? This is a judge-free zone. You never have to worry about feeling unheard or anything. So to join this group, all you have to do is click the link below and join our podcast mailing list. And once you join the list, you will get access to the support group. So all you have to do is click the link below and I'll see you in the group. Goodbye. And I'll see you next time. your sister through love grows.